Hello and welcome to the show. So we are live. This is Tuesdays with Schwartz. If you are brand new, welcome to you. We have over 250 followers at this point. We are gaining every single week. And so I want to thank everybody that's new to this account, new to this channel. And so today's show is going to be all about three things. Well, three pieces. One thing, advocacy. So what does that mean? That means that do parents, students, teachers have a voice? Do you have a voice in today's society? Do you have a voice in what goes on in schools? The honest truth is no, you do not. And here's the perfect example. So in the year 2000, President George W. Bush took office and he called for education reform, and he actually succeeded. He was able to pass a legislative bill called No Child Left Behind. And what that did was bring in school accountability, student testing, and a whole slew of teacher evaluation tools. All right. Now, 20 years later, did that solve any problems? And the answer is no. I know that it's an oversimplification of the problem, but the truth is, and the real answer is that no, it did not reform schools in the way that everyone wanted, at least the public. I can't say if it didn't achieve the intended consequences that Washington wanted, because I think it did. But it did not achieve what the public wanted. It did not achieve what students were looking for. It did not achieve what teachers were asking for. But you have to understand that Washington has one metric and we, the society, have a different metric. For us, people, we the people, we want success. We want people to achieve more. And the American dream, part of it is that the next generation can do better than the previous generation. So parents want their kids to do better than they did. So they give more to their kids. That's actually the whole point of the American dream. But Washington has a different metric. Their metric is basically GDP, gross domestic product. What they're looking for is how much money can be generated. And so the No Child Left Behind bill that turned into law generated about $3 billion just from that one piece of legislation. So for Washington, they felt this was the greatest piece of legislation they'd ever passed. So where did the money come from? What did it actually generate? And so I'm going to go over that and then get into where you fit in. So the first thing that it created was school accountability, right? So a $1 billion testing system was created, the standardized test. And that's how we got to where we are with the test. It's a $1 billion industry in America. Whether you like it or not, it's $1 billion. So from Washington's standpoint, that's a win for them. The next thing was a $1 billion industry all around teacher and principal evaluation. Evaluation system became known or developed after the year 2000. So that's another $1 billion right there. And then, if that wasn't enough, we also had the student data industry created, which now had to analyze all the stuff from the teacher evaluation and from the student test scores, and that's another $1 billion industry. So one piece of legislation created $3 billion worth of GDP on the bottom line for Washington. Now, reality, how it affects you and me, how it affects teachers, how it affects parents, how it affects students, what actually happened. So the first thing is that everybody said, okay, now we need to take this big test. So anxiety went up. We got a situation where There's a lot of anxiety now around schools, around testing, around everything that we do. In addition to that, anxiety comes negativity and doubt and all of the other things that undermine your ability to follow the American dream. And so the unintended consequences of the standardized test was that we actually prevented most kids from believing they could succeed in school and then later on in life. Because if you graduate from high school, and granted, there are a lot of kids who do not graduate from high school. There are a lot of kids. There are tens of thousands of kids who do not graduate from high school every single year. And you compound that over, that means hundreds of thousands of kids over multiple years, where we're getting into millions that do not have high school diplomas. Okay? So we say that we have an educational system, but it's not really working for a lot of people. But let's say you do graduate, okay? The vast majority are graduating. What does that high school diploma do for you? Not much. It is necessity. You have to have a high school diploma to go to the armed forces. You have to get a high school diploma to get into college, and you have to have a high school diploma to get into a lot of certification programs. So you have to have the degree, but it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just a piece of paper. And so that's part of the problem that we're running into, because in the future, and today is this beginning of the future, because we're in the year 2020 now. This isn't 1994 and you can get away with doing that. Like, the world has changed, and most of you, anybody that's watching this, knows that you are not in the part of the country that's totally oblivious to the fact that we live in 2020. You are hooked in to modern society. Now, I'm going to tell you that you're alone. You do not represent the vast majority of this country. The vast majority of this country is oblivious to modern society. They have no idea what's going on. So there's this tug of war between the generations that are oblivious, including the people in Washington, because they are a bit oblivious. They are not hooked in the way you are. So when you speak, they don't hear you. Why? Because they're not hooked in. So this gets back to the advocacy part. So I was able to do research, and I do a ton of research. I don't know if you noticed that from my account. You look at all of my posts. There's a ton of research. I don't have all of it up, getting there. Posting is challenging, as all of you Instagrammers know. It's challenging to get things into a succinct little meme to be able to post to say, hey, this is what I'm trying to say. But we're getting there. Now, advocacy is all about you, not someone else. You. This is about your voice, your future, what you want. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a new website. It's going to be at leafacademy.org/mission. Okay, so leafacademy.org/mission. It will go live on Friday, December 11th. So if you're watching this, you could go there, leafacademy.org/mission, and all you're going to have to do is sign up for the mailing list. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. Doesn't going to cost you money. It's not going to make you think. All you're going to do is say that I want to be hooked in and I don't want to be left out. Now I'm going to explain why. So the first thing that I found on Instagram was an organization called teachersforgoodtrouble.org. Okay? If you haven't heard of them, I'm telling you now. Now, what are they advocating? Because we're talking about advocacy. They're advocating for not doing the standardized test this year. I know you know what's going on, but again, the majority of the world is oblivious. So we are in the middle of a pandemic, and schools have done multiple things. Every school district has made a decision as to what they feel their community can handle. In-person, hybrid, or totally virtual classrooms. Every school district, every community made their own decision. Totally fine. That follows democracy. Your freedom, your community, you choose. Okay. But the test requires standardization. That means that every kid that takes the test has to be in the same conditions. They get the same instructions read to them, it's the same test, and it's supposed to be the same classroom environment. Problem is, in the pandemic, we've destroyed this standardization. Why? Because not every kid is in class. You can't take a test virtually. You can't take a test hybrid. You can't take a test. You have to be in the same place. So if you've been learning virtually and now you have to go into school to take a standardized test, it automatically makes the testing data inaccurate and invalid. Automatically. Which also means that any school district that has not gone virtual and takes the test, their test scores are inaccurate and invalid because it's no longer being compared and benchmarked against other people, to other students. So the whole system of standardized testing has been completely destroyed because of the pandemic. It's just destroyed. So Teachers for Good Trouble recognizes that, and what they're saying is we just shouldn't do that this year. That's a no-brainer. 100% you should just sign a petition and just say, hey, that makes perfect sense to me. Now that's giving advocacy. That's saying I want my voice to be heard. And to just let you know that as of today, Tuesday, December 8th, they have over 10,000 signatures already. So you're not alone in thinking, oh, yes, that makes sense to me. Yes, you are part of a larger group that is saying, yeah, we don't want to waste any more time. Now, I created a YouTube video that talks about why it's a waste of time. You can go and check that out. That's at my YouTube channel, Leaf Academy. So you can find that. Understand it's the Leaf Academy in the United States, not the Leaf Academy in Europe, which is an actual academy. I don't know why they're called Leaf Academy. It's a weird name for an actual school, but okay. Europe's doing their thing. But you could go and check that video out if you would like. So that's the first piece of advocacy, is to make sure that your voice is heard. So please definitely go see teachersforgoodtrouble.org, sign the petition. You have to scroll down a little bit. The button is a little bit further down the page, but it's a petition. It's on change.org, which is a great place for petitions, and sign it. It's easy, it's quick, do it. You will not lose by signing this petition. In fact, you will help kids, parents, and teachers by not taking a test that's a waste of time. It's a waste of time and money. And maybe schools can actually transfer or postpone that payment and say, hey, we'll pay for this next year. How about let's figure this out next year. But for this year, let's save that money, let's save that time, and let's just do this when it makes more sense. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, because the test is just the test, it doesn't actually do anything. So did you know that the curriculum that we're using right now in school is a 19th century curriculum? Now, you may know that, but you may not really understand what that really means. Now, I'm going to explain that. And I'm going to be doing a whole series of posts on what a 22nd century curriculum is. Again, this is about advocacy, this episode, not necessarily about any one topic. It's about, are you hooked in, and do you want your voice to be heard? Because what's going to happen is things are going to change. But Just like in the year 2000, when No Child Left Behind came, teachers were not happy, students were not happy, and parents were not happy. And the reason is because you did not have a real voice. You voted for everybody in Washington, and they have a different metric than you do. Remember, they look at GDP, you look at people. What we do as educators, we're on your side. We're on the public side. We're not on Washington's side. So in fact, it's kind of like an us versus them situation. It's the people versus the government. So if you feel that the government doesn't listen to you, then I urge you on Friday, December 11th, to go to leafacademy.org/mission and just sign up for the newsletter. That's it. It really is that simple. So a 22nd century curriculum has a couple key elements. I'm going to only go over a couple of them because this is not about the idea, it's about advocacy. So the first thing is that you need to be able to, in the future, well, actually now, since now's the future, but from now on, from today forward, students need to be able to make quick decisions. And they need to be good, quick decisions. And what does that mean? It means if a kid is in a situation, let's say peer pressure, okay? So a kid is in school and someone asks them to do something that they would never think about on their own, they need to make a quick decision to say either yes or no. Now, where peer pressure comes in is that kids are forced by other kids to do things or to make decisions that are against their own interests. School, teachers, and the curriculum do not teach kids how to make those types of decisions and make them in split-second time, so that when other kids come to kids and say, hey, I want you to do this, that kid can stand on their 2 feet and say, I don't think so, this is what I believe, and I'm going to walk away. End of story. That kid has gotten themselves out of a situation that could turn ugly if they didn't understand what was happening around them. Now, that's a skill that can be taught. Okay? It's not instinctual. It's not innate. It's not from parents. It's not from your family. It's not family values. It's teachable skills. And a curriculum has to pinpoint the skills necessary to be able to tell kids, this is how you do this, and practice daily. See, we have things in our classrooms that we're practicing daily. We're practicing vocabulary. We're practicing multiplication tables. But we don't practice decision making. So that's a problem. Now, the other thing that we've lost with the standardized tests, I happen to have to say, is standardized testing removes creativity from the classroom. Why? Because it's standardized. Standardized also means sterilized. So if you want a bunch of robots coming out of school, you give them a standardized test and you teach to the test because you want them all to know and think the exact same way. Now, that was awesome when John Dewey was writing his books and in the 19th century, and every single educational expert known to man, that's a brilliant idea. But in the 22nd century, it is the dumbest idea. Because the 22nd century does not care that you know what everyone else knows. The 22nd century only cares that you know something unique and that you can create something that no one else has figured out. The 22nd century is going to be the century of individuals. The 22nd century is going to be the century of ideas, unique ideas. And so kids today in school are being basically taken away from all of their inspiration and creativity because they're being forced to learn and think like everyone else. So the 22nd century is going to get away from that. And so we need to start teaching kids how to think creatively. What do they like? What do they know? What do they want to research? So that they can start building a portfolio, building a life. Kids today have to be able to be self-sufficient so much earlier than previous generations. And there's a big, social media guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, okay? And he talks about you got to be patient, you got to be patient, you got to be patient. Unfortunately, in the 22nd century, patience is only part of it. You need to be patient because it's not going to happen overnight, but you need to be prepared today. Kids have to start making themselves successful by the age of 22 or 23. They need to have an idea as to what they're going to do. If they don't, they're really behind. So this is all about kind of helping kids be successful in the 22nd century. I hear you, Chevy. I'm going to give it to you. Hold on. So the last piece of this. So if you want to have your voice heard, it is all about advocacy. Okay. So go to leafacademy.org/mission. You're going to just be able to sign up for the mailing list. There's going to be a whole bunch of surveys that will be emailed to you. Fill out the ones that you want to be a part of and don't fill out the others. One of them is going to be a generalized one. What are the issues you feel schools do not address today? You need to get your voice heard. If you don't stand up, you're never going to be heard. There is no centralized place at all for schools and education. We feel like there is, but there isn't. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Twitter, there's YouTube. There's a lot of different channels, but no one centralized place for people to talk about education, schools, and the future. That's what I'm creating. One centralized place to get everyone together. That means all the educational experts. That means all the teachers, every parent, every student in one location so that we can start making a difference together, not separately, together. Now is the time to do that because we're in a pandemic. What else are we going to do? It's time to just get your voice known. So, hopefully that helped. Please DM me. I made a post. I have over 250 followers. I have like 200 ongoing live DMs. Please just DM me. I will respond. This is about connectivity. So you can't advocate if you don't say anything. So say something. Comment on my post. If you like them, say, I agree. If you don't like them, say why you don't like them. Or just DM me privately. You don't have to necessarily be active publicly, but you have to be active. You have to take a stand. Teachers, parents, students, give your voice some power and say, I want to make this a better place. I want to help schools. I want to show support to teachers and parents and to students. So hopefully that all makes sense. So I'm going to jump off now. I appreciate every one of my followers. Thank you so much. If there's anything that I can do for you guys, just let me know. I'm building a whole bunch of products and programs as we speak. So thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you next week on Live with Tuesdays with Schwartz.